Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teamwork a Better Way. I am Christian Napier. I am joined by His Royal Highness in purple,
Whatever.
Spencer Horn. Spencer, how you doing?
Doing fabulous, fantastic, fantabulous. Good to be with you. I was combining those two words in my brain and it just didn't come out right.
Hey, I'm all for concatenation and unique combinations of words and phrases. I think that's fantastic.
You pulled
You got to tell me a little bit
concatenation
about
right
where
off the top of your head. That's impressive.
you got to tell me a little bit about your trip to Seattle last week because I'm a huge fan of Seattle. My daughter lives in Seattle. I worked in Seattle. So yeah, give
Yeah,
give me
well,
give me the deets.
I absolutely. Our guest, who I'm excited to introduce in just a second. I was just listening to her podcast because she has this organized 365 podcast, like 24 million downloads. And just recently, her most recent topic that dropped was talking about vacations and the difference between that and trips and sick days. So she's talking about how to manage that well. But I learned a lot about our guest here, and growing up, all her vacations turned out to be like educational experiences or family vacations. Christian, when you go and usually the wife ends up doing all the meals and all the laundry and everything that you normally do. So for them, it's not really a vacation. So this I find with my wife and I, we're empty nesters. We have 11, almost 11 grandchildren now. And so for her, the life of managing the household, which we're going to talk about today, there tends to be a mental load that builds up and that impacts the relationship after a while because we're all kind of going our separate ways and we don't in my relationship anyway, it seems like we don't always stop to connect as much as we should. So we look forward to going on these trips. It's a business trip for me, but I bring my business partner and my life partner along with us, with me, and I do my thing on Wednesday up in Seattle, and then on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we go together anywhere we can. We love food. We find this little bakery in Polsbo. I don't know if you've heard of Polsbo. It's this little Norwegian village, just close to Bainbridge Island. So we take the
Yep.
ferry across from Seattle, and we find this bakery. And oh my goodness, Sly's Bakery. It's been there since the 60s, and we visit this thing 3 times. The third time we go is this Saturday, and there's a line out the door. This is how popular this bakery is, and we're getting in that line, even though we didn't experience it before. And we buy like $25 of baked goods between the two of us each time. I mean, so we come out with bags of stuff that we should not be eating. We just can't help ourselves. And then we go see Olympic National Park. We go up to Hurricane Ridge. We go to we go hiking. But the key is we're together. We're eating out. We're just renewing, refreshing. It was wonderful. So thanks for asking.
Well, it sounded like you had an amazing weekend there and a wonderful time there in Seattle. I'm a little jealous. We were there last month
Yeah.
as our daughter had our third grandchild, and then
So
number four just came last week. So we got some catching up to do with you, Spencer. But
well, we're gonna do
uh,
that today for lunch, aren't we?
yes, we certainly are. I'm super excited about talking with our guest today. I'll have you introduced in a minute. Our the title of our episode, you kind of paraphrase it, the home CEO, running your household like a high performing team. This is a different take for us, right? We're typically talking about professional things, and as leaders, we spend years, mastering uh, leadership principles, team alignment, delegation, strategic planning, blah blah blah. We do all that at work, and then we go home, and all that stuff may just fall by the wayside. So
We
super
don't take that
excited
same
to.
level of care and planning and preparation at home.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive into this with our guests. So maybe we should just go ahead and get on with it, Spencer. Why don't you go ahead and introduce her?
Absolutely. I'm going to bring her smiling face up on the screen when we talk about this is Lisa Woodruff, everyone. And she is the founder and CEO of Organize 365. And she and 87% of Americans believe Organization is a learnable skill. I agree with that. Yet fewer than 18% of those same Americans feel they are organized. That's a pretty big gap. There's some cognitive dissonance going on there. Something's happening. But as the host of the top rated Organized 365 podcast with 24 million downloads, as I said, Lisa shares strategies for reducing overwhelm, clearing mental clutter, and living a productive, organized life. We are so excited to have you, Lisa. Thank you for joining us on Teamwork a Better Way.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and being open to thinking about expanding our leadership into the household.
Well, yeah, to that very point, it's interesting. You've said household management is CEO level work.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we treat it not like real work?
Well, I think we don't want to admit that we're doing 20 to 40 hours worth of work at home per week. And that is what statistics will show. That's about how much work we're doing. And when we look at the work, we're just looking at the visible work, the laundry, the dishes, the cleaning, and we're not really thinking about the managerial, the invisible work that we do to make sure that we're getting all of our projects done and harmonious family relations. And we look at visible work and doing the work, and we work on the business, the invisible work. I want us to take us even one step further into that CEO, strategic, visionary, mission-driven work in our household, not just managing the invisible work and doing the visible work.
Well,
So,
go, Christian.
Sorry to cut in here, Spencer, because I think this is a super fascinating topic, but one question that really popped into my mind as you're talking, we use this word CEO, so, one of the things that could be potentially challenging is, okay, maybe I'm in this leadership position at work, but when I come home, do I really want my life partner or my kids do I want to look at them like employees? I feel like maybe, I don't know. The lessons, could they apply? Maybe, but I'm like, I don't know if I feel comfortable, thinking of them as employees. So how do you get around that idea of like, okay, well, I'm the CEO of my organization, or I'm the founder, or I'm the executive director, or whatever it is, and come home and have these kinds of, and apply the same skills, but not treat the people in your family like they're your employees.
Yeah, I never mentioned that the people in my family are my employees. As a matter of fact, running a household is much more like a solopreneur business, and that you are actually doing all of the things. You are working in the business, you are working on the business, and you are setting the strategic directive. Now, if you have family members that want to partner with you in that, that's great. If you have financial resources where you can offload some of those tasks and delegate them, that is great. But what I have found for myself personally is only I can control myself. I can't make my spouse do something, make my children do something. They have a bad day. At the end of the day, the buck stops with me. So I take ownership of all three levels, but I also employ myself differently when I'm doing laundry versus managing projects and budgets versus setting the goals for our entire household.
Yeah, and so that's you're making this distinction between household management and housework. Right.
Yeah.
So most people use those terms interchangeably, though, don't they?
They do, because
so
they.
Yeah, so I want you to explain what actually is the difference, and does that matter? Because I think this idea of managing the household has maybe a really negative stigma today. I mean, so many people say, well, usually falls to a certain party in a relationship, while somebody outside of the home has more of the glory and is bringing home more pecuniary benefits and assets, and so we tend to maybe diminish the value of what happens at home. And I want to hear why that's a mistake, because I think it is.
Okay, I'm going to take you through 3 hops in order to get to where I am now at the age of 54 with a PhD, where I'm studying this at an academic level. Step 1, my entire goal in life was to get married, become a wife, mother, be a stay-at-home mom. Did that for a decade, checked the box, loved doing every single bit of the housework. Then I started this company at the age of 40, and it was a solopreneur company. I did all the work in the company, started to build a team, and started to become a CEO at work and have W-2 employees. And I was like, oh, I have to think differently about my business because I'm working in the business, I'm managing my team, but also if I'm not thinking strategically about the profitability and where the company is going, then we're all going to be out of business very soon. And I started to look back at my household, and I had worked my way out of some of my work at home, some by abdicating my role and just being like, well, this isn't going to get done anymore, some by hiring it out, and some by doing it in different off hours. And I was like, I wonder if I take my managerial and CEO strengths I'm learning as a solopreneur and apply it to my household, if I can manage more, if I can have more capacity and get more done at home and reduce my expectations on the housework and the things that are never going to be done, just like at work. I would never spend a lot of time at work optimizing email. Like email is just something we do in order to get work done. I reduced meetings like crazy so we have more time to work on projects. I started to apply those principles into my household. And then I learned a couple of statistics. 68% of US GDP is household spending. So in that way, the American household is a business. The money that we bring into our household from working somewhere and getting paid, we bring it into the household. We then redistribute that into society. And if we don't do it, then we're in a recession. And then we get a stimulus check. So we are a business entity. And, governments are looking at us, businesses are looking at us like we are the product. So even as a stay-at-home mom, when I wasn't earning money in the workplace, I was running a household. I was in charge of a P&L. I had a market impact. And so I thought, oh, we all are running a small business in our households. It takes 20 to 40 hours to do it without children. And it has an economic impact in the community. So let's treat it like the business it is. Let's reduce the amount of hours we work and be really purposeful with how we use those hours and maximize the productivity of those hours and our dollars. So we do have leisure time at home, because that's ultimately what we all want. We want more leisure time, more of our time to do what we want to do with it.
For vacations?
Well, I mean, if you can get one.
Well, as long as there's no sharks involved.
Right. Good listening.
So I find this conversation really, really intriguing. If we're the business, if the family or the home is the business, then what's the product,
Mhm.
right? In business, the goal is often profit or growth. So, in your experience, and also in not just as running a home, but also transitioning it to be this business owner, and also the academic work you're doing, what would you
Mhm.
consider the product of a well-run home to be? Is it peace? Is it efficiency? Is it character? I'm just curious, from your perspective, does it matter? I'm just, when I try to think of my home as a business, then my mind goes to, well, typically businesses have off products or services. So what is the product or what is the service of the home?
Yeah. So now that I officially got my PhD last Friday, like 1 week ago today, so it's very fresh, my mind is now able to start thinking about, thank you. What is my Thank you very much. Thank you. My mind is now able to go to, what is my theoretical orientation? I have been in households and helping organize households and now working on this academic work. The current conversation is a he said, she said conversation. Women are doing too much, men get it together and do more. That's great if you're in a coupled relationship, which only 17.9% of Americans are married with children under the age of 18. None of us on this call have children under the age of 18. So none of us are even in the academic studies that are going on. So what are these other 80% of Americans? What are these households that they're in? How is that work divided? If you are a single mother, 40% of children this year will be born to a single mother. You can't divide the housework if you're the only adult in the relationship, right? So some of the solutions we have are not solving the problem. So your question was, what is the purpose of the home? And I think that is a great question that I don't think has been asked. And my personal answer to that, and what Organize 365's mission is that the self-actualization of all of the people living in that residence. So what I mean by that is, when I was a stay-at-home mom and my children wanted to get piano lessons or soccer lessons, like I would sign them up, I would drive them. I don't have a concert pianist or a professional soccer player today, and my children are adults, but there was nothing I wouldn't do to provide opportunities for them to explore if this is a way in which they might excel future in life. But we don't tend to do that once we are adults. We do in our work, but we don't necessarily in our household. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn? What do you want to explore? How could you become a more well-rounded human? Just what do you want to do for your hobbies? And I think that self-actualization that we can experience at work is what we are also supposed to be able to experience at home.
Lisa, I think you actually answered that question earlier when you were talking about uh, creating an environment where those relationships flourish, right? Where the
Yeah.
mental load is managed. That's part of the self actualization you're talking about. I envision that. Think about those 18-year-old kids and them wanting to come home, bringing their friends to
Yeah.
their house because there's a an energy and a calm from the world, if you will. You walk in those doors and it's like, even though there's all the things that have to happen, it's I'm home. And you know, we hear at
Mm-hmm.
Christmas time these songs, I can't wait to come home when we're older.
Mm-hmm.
We want to come to that place where we are loved and appreciated. And that means we have to manage that household in such a way that the activities don't take precedent over the connections, the relationships. The mental load isn't so great that we can, and which is even harder for many single households because you know they're having to do everything. Where do you find the time to self actualize? Where do you find the time to connect and empower and strengthen when you got to go fight outside the castle? Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, the times when you get the most worn out is when you're in caregiving relationships. So when you're caring for children, caring for spouses, sometimes caring for yourself, when you're ill, caring for parents. And those caregiving relationships and seasons can be very, very long and draining. And so those are the most unpredictable seasons that you may get in. They're going to have a lot of cognitive load, a lot of additional stress. However, when you're not in those seasons and you've got a period of a little bit of time, we talk a lot about household management. And to be honest, for the last decade, I've elevated us from housework to household management. I'm like, let's put all these management principles in place. But now I want to take us up to the CEO level because CEOs lead. And they lead through influence. As John Maxwell will say, leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. If you are managing your household and you're overwhelmed, you will micromanage, and no one wants to work for a micromanager, right? But leaders, you will follow true leaders. You will want to do what they're doing. It will be fun. It will be exciting. They will trick you into working and you won't even realize that you're working. And when you're all working for a common goal and you understand the mission, vision, and values of your company, you understand the mission and vision and values of the holidays that you're about to put on for your children and your grandchildren, the multi-generational family that you're living in for economic reasons or other reasons. Like, once you understand why your family is communing the way it is, and you have that mission and that vision, you then can manage the projects and deploy the resources for the benefit of all from that visionary standpoint.
Okay, so sorry, I got a little emotional last segment there, but you know, we've got this question about what are we producing, and you're talking about we're getting all this stuff done. So if you were to if you were to put a dollar value on
Mhm.
household management role, what would most families discover? Because you talked about having an impact. So I'm kind of going back to this idea that 66% of all world GDP really comes from household spending.
Mhm.
What is that dollar value on doing this well?
I mean, that is what academia is trying to do through their research and trying to propose policy change, that you would give money to household managers so that they can stay home and raise children and run households, and there's an economic
Because
value to
there
it.
is an economic value and engine.
There is.
Absolutely.
And I understand that that's not really my theoretical orientation. I really want to, if you can't afford to outsource, if you don't have a spouse, if your spouse isn't participatory, if your children aren't able to do the chores, I mean, you who are running the household, you're still going to need to do it. So as a leader, I always look at what can I do? Like if my employees in my company don't do what I ask them to do, or I don't feel like we hit the mark on an initiative, the first question I ask myself is, where was I unclear? Where didn't I get the right resources? How did I not communicate the vision? What's going on in the economy? I look at every other thing other than the employee to answer why that didn't happen. Occasionally, it's the employee. But most often, there's usually something I didn't do or I didn't take into account as the CEO that made that initiative not actually happen.
And so
And the
that
more
is the
that you
principle.
grow yourself,
If more leaders ask that question, the world would be a better place. Not even in the home, in the workplace. Those are great questions. Keep going.
so if you are then as the CEO running your household, yes, the work has to get done. It can get done on different days and different cadences, but at the end of the day, I just was at home with my grandchildren while my daughter went to a parent teacher conference, missed work for that. Grandson wanted to build Legos. We're building Legos. I don't know how when you open the Lego package and it's all in front of you, the pieces are already missing. What is up with that? Multiple pieces. And I know how to do Legos. And I was like, this isn't working. All right, I'll move to the other part. And he like made some robot out of the thing. And I was like, yeah, who cares about the directions? Like, we're now just making robots. Is the purpose to build the Legos that I bought him? Or is the purpose to spend time with your grandson no matter what happens? Like, we need to be able to let go of those check the box, task oriented things. So the value of a CEO in the home, I mean, you can't put a price on it because, yeah, you could put a price on replacing the actual physical work that is done in the home. Most households aren't run from a visionary standpoint. And CEOs sometimes are worth more than they're paid, and sometimes they're worth less than they're paid. They're whatever the market will bear. In this case, the market is your family, it's your legacy. It's does your family want to come home? Are you the family that they want to go see? Are you the person that they call at 3 a.m.? Are you the one who has organized your life and has enough cognitive capacity and taking care of yourself and your family so that when the emergency happens, they call you because they know that you can handle even more and you will have good, clear head about it.
Serious lag, Christian. Sorry, man.
Yeah. Well, technology. What are you going to do? It's the beauty of live shows, right? Um,
Mhm.
so this leads me to a question that is important for me personally,
Mhm.
because um, uh, if if we're talking about in a business, I come from a software or an IT background, right? So uh, we often talk about success criteria or acceptance criteria, or what does success look like? You talk about these things, and I think it's important to figure out how to frame that correctly so that you don't become really disappointed if your family doesn't meet expectation. Like um, we're seeing, and I'm seeing this in my own family. Uh, the challenge of estrangement, where certain family members peel off because
Mhm.
they have different political or religious, other fundamental beliefs, and they're not comfortable around other family members, and they're just like, oh, I'm out of here. And
Mhm.
when that happens, then those holidays that you once cherished, that you all got together, Thanksgiving and Christmas or whatever it is, where you all got together and not everybody's there, can be very hard for people. And so I'm curious what kind of advice you would give to people looking through that lens of self-actualization to help them find
Mhm.
peace, even if they don't, in their own view, have the perfect family. Like uh, there's divorce, there's all kinds of things that happen, and uh, it can be difficult for some family or some people uh, to look and say, well, compared to Spencer, my family's a failure because I can't get everybody together for Christmas or Thanksgiving
Mhm.
or, you know, Mother's Day or whatever it is because of these situations that have happened over the course of time. And those times that should be joyful become times of sorrow. So I'm just curious how you address those kinds of feelings with people who, I'm like, yeah, I'm gung ho. I want to do this. I want to be the CEO of the home. I want to do these things. And then I face these realities that, well, I have some circumstances that many of them are kind of outside of my control that are impacting my own view on whether I'm a good CEO of the home or not.
Yeah, this is a unique way to think about this. So, a couple things I would say. As a CEO of a small business, the work level, the intensity is different when you're having a team week and you're like celebrating and getting ready for the next year, or you're busy shipping for a Black Friday initiative, or you're in one of the slower months where there's not a lot of revenue coming in and you're not working on a new project. Like as a CEO, you manage differently in all those different times, right? And I'm going to keep pulling it back to business because we have a lot of understanding. When we bring things into the household, our understanding of how households run is very small. We know our household, maybe a couple of friends, our family of origin, and maybe some extended family members. But almost always when we're at other people's houses, they're on best behavior and their house is organized. So we think their house is always organized, just so you know, it's not. So we are measuring ourselves against everyone else's best effort and what we see on social media or what's portrayed in TV and movies. And we think that that's what our household should look like. So there's the day-to-day running of the household as a CEO, and then these special events like vacations or holidays. So on the day-to-day running of the household as the CEO, that's where I think self-actualization should be the ultimate aim, and or at least a thought. Like, is every single member of this family have at least one outlet in which they are expressing their uniqueness and being supported with some time to further themselves as a human? Maybe not a lot of time, but they have, I don't know, 20 minutes a day to read a book or go for a walk or, take a golf class or something like that. And so everybody has some time to be working on their own personal and professional development. Now, when we get to holidays, when we get to vacations, and we're doing larger family gatherings, my parents got divorced when I was in my 30s, and my mom and dad were high school sweethearts. So when I was born, I had aunts and uncles that were still in middle school and high school. So it was very much, these families were very intertwined. And my mom and dad's families actually celebrated Thanksgiving and Christmas together. Like they would be at each other's houses for the holidays. And that was my entire lived experience. And then in my 30s, they got divorced, and it literally didn't only break my holidays. It broke all of my extended family members' holidays because there was just so much uncoupling that happened at that time. I also think a lot about COVID. And, during that lockdown, people got certain perceptions, had certain ideas. The political climate right now is very divided. And so, people are drawing a line in the sand. I'm not putting up with this anymore. I don't have to do this. I am going to have my own opinions. I am or I'm not going to spend time with you. I am or I'm not going to talk about these different things. And that really has been since the pandemic and this really big political divisiveness we have in our country. My personal orientation has always been, I love humans. I have yet to meet a person I did not enjoy having a conversation with. I don't usually talk about religion and politics. I have a religion that I believe in. I have a political persuasion, but I could talk to pretty much anyone of any religion or any political persuasion at length because I like people and I love diversity of thought and I love learning new things. In families, it's a blessing and a curse in that we have a family and they come together and we don't have the same lived experience and we don't have the same political or religious views sometimes. And some people just won't, they're like a dog with a bone. They just won't let that bone go. And they come in hot and they just want to have this conversation. So what I have learned to do personally myself is I literally write down a whole bunch of other things we could talk about. So when I get cornered by anyone, at a party or in some kind of an event, I've got a whole list of topics that I can change things to. My kids are so funny. Like something's going on, and I'll be like, and I'll start another topic. And most people are like, how are those Reds doing? I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Like they moved to sports. I'm not that obvious about it, but I move over to some topic, and my son will be like, she's directing us again. She's moving us on to a new topic, like off of this hot one. And that's what a CEO would do. That's what a CEO would do, is they would make sure that there's, they would orchestrate that conversation. They would think about it in advance. They would know what the hot spots are going to be, and they'd have some kind of a plan to, as best they can, move us off of that topic.
You made me think of that sketch that Brian Regan does, if anyone knows who Brian Regan is. Where he's
yes,
like,
I do.
I go to parties when people say something I don't agree with. I don't know what to do. This lady says that animals are smarter than people. He's like, what do you say? No one's going to say anything?
Right. Yeah. And just, start a new conversation.
Right. I love that you do that. So that's fantastic. Well, let's come a little bit back. Hopefully this kind of fits along the same vein of what you were talking about. Most teams fail not from a lack of knowledge, but from a lack of shared behavior. Where do you see that show up most clearly inside of families? And if you could maybe give an example, that would be terrific.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot. I really do not feel that men are holding women back, period, full stop. I think that our housework is holding us back, and our expectation of what done housework looks like, and that women have a never-ending checklist of what they want to do, what they think should be done, and what they think an end-all organized house looks like. And so we are running ourselves ragged, checking things off of a checklist that nobody is checking, trying to get a gold star that no one is giving us. And you get to a point in life, at first it's fun, playing house is fun. And then you get to, your late 30s, early 40s, and you're like, this is for the birds. Why am I doing all this work? Why isn't everybody helping me? And by the time you get to that point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, you have not created any SOPs. You haven't created any checklists that other family members can see. You haven't taken and created a binder about how the household operates. It's all in your brain. It's all, motor memory. You just go through your day and you get everything done. You are the family's Google. If they have any question, they're asking you a question and you're spouting out the answer like you're Siri, and you're moving on, and they can't find information themselves without getting it from you. And then you say, this is baloney. Family, you need to be doing more work around here. And they say, okay, how can I help? And you're like, you should know, you live here. And I've lived in my same house for 30 years. Like I do the same thing. I'm like, how do you not know where the backup ketchup is? We've lived in the same house for 30 years. And my husband's like, you keep moving it. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm not moving the ketchup. You should know where the ketchup is. But the truth of the matter is, I buy the ketchup. I put the ketchup away. I know where the ketchup is. He really doesn't know where it is. He doesn't know. And you could say, well, maybe he should ask. And yeah, that is definitely the conversations that's being had in the media. But that doesn't really solve the problem. So how do I think we solve the problem, especially for middle-aged women, is that we have to take the time and think through either how we've done things or how we want things to be done. And we need to operationalize it. And then we need to say, hi, husband, welcome to the home. Invite them in the door and say, hi, this is your house. Here's where we live. Here's how I do this. Here's how I do this. Here's how I do this. I was wondering, would you be able to do one of these three things for me because I can't do all three anymore? They will say, of course, yes, I would like to do category B. Then you go, great. You give them category B. And then you move on and you do A and C. A couple of things I want to say about this. Number one, first, before we even decide to operationalize it and hand it off to somebody else, can we eliminate it? There's a lot of things that we're doing in the household. I don't even know why we're doing them. We don't need to do them. Case in point, when COVID happened, our house was being cleaned by someone else, which is glorious if you can afford it. And I know how to clean a house. I used to clean other people's houses. So I started, doing the toilets, the bathrooms, the kitchens, yada, yada, yada. We're at week 7 of lockdown, and all of a sudden there is dust everywhere. And I was like, oh yeah, totally forgot we need to dust. So if you're dusting any more often than every 6 weeks, you're over dusting. Just a silly example. Second, you can take the time and be really business-like about it and write down your SOPs and hand things over to somebody else in your family. Or you can just decide that something in your household isn't really something that you can handle anymore. So about 10 years ago, I was driving my kids. They were in early high school, 2 different schools, 25 hours a week, driving the kids, driving for my professional organization job. I was eating all fast food. The children were eating all fast food. I was still going to the grocery store on the weekend, buying food because my husband comes home and has lunch from work. He comes home from lunch, eats lunch, goes back to work. And then most of the rest of groceries we were throwing out every week before I went and got more groceries. So I came home one night and I said to my husband, I said, you know what? I don't go to the grocery store anymore. And he's like, what? How are we going to get food in the house? I said, fun fact, you have a credit card, you have a car, and you know where the grocery store is. So I literally dropped that hot potato, and I still don't go to a grocery store to this day. Then when COVID happened and grocery stores were the only place you would go, he started his 4 grocery store per weekend habit. So now he goes to a lot of grocery stores, and we have really great food, and I still don't go to grocery stores. So there are a lot of ways in which you can just abdicate like I did with the food. You can eliminate the role entirely because we just don't really need to do that anymore. But it's all about conversation and really taking the time to say, here's the end goal. This does or doesn't have to happen. I don't have the capacity to do all of these things anymore. Is there any of this that you could take? And then when they take it, like my husband does with the grocery store, he can do it any way he wants. I really don't care. So he goes to 4 stores.
I love that. We had this philosophy, my wife and I, that is embodied in the sign that we had on the wall. And it said, my house is not always clean, but my kids are loved, fed, and hugged every day. And part of it is, sometimes you got to let some things go, right? And be okay with the fact that the house is messy.
Mm-hmm.
But that means the person who's not in the household all the time doesn't come home and say, well, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
Because my wife will always I feel like you think I don't do anything all day. And so then there's this judgment that happens that creates dysfunction in the organization, in the team. So you have to have both, again, be on board with the fact that this is how we're going to operate, and not everything can be done with the capacity that we currently have and the responsibilities that we currently have.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm curious to hear, Lisa, is sometimes people will say, well, okay, I go to work and I do all my work, and then I come home and I'm mentally exhausted. And my time at home is supposed to be recovery time, right? And so,
still got laundry,
but there's a lot of stuff that has to be done, right? So, I guess one of the questions I have for you is how do you ensure that there is time for respite, and that you have your full-time job, then you come home, and then if it's all work, then you don't have the self-actualization. So how do you help people figure out how to weigh, okay, well, I got to go to 4 grocery stores. So we have the food, but also I need to also take care of myself emotionally and spiritually and all those other things.
Yeah, that's when I think you realize that, okay, yeah, we have 24 hours in a day. You have 168 hours in a week. You have more time than you think. You can have 40 hours a week of work, and you can have, 8 times 6, like 68 hours of sleep. You're still going to have, 90 more hours to yourself. The problem is a lot of that time is from 7 to 10 o'clock at night, where you're not going to sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to do our taxes now. You just don't have that kind of energy for that kind of work. I really don't want to run laundry at 9 o'clock at night on a Tuesday. So matching that work to the energy becomes a problem. This really comes to a head when you're in a caregiving situation. So in the parenting years, academic literature will show that women do not have leisure time. They just flat out don't have it. Men do, women don't in coupled relationships, because there's the parenting, there's the housework, there's the work, and there literally is no free time for them for decades. And I think that's why women get so worn out in midlife, is because they haven't had a lot of that time. Secondly, you will find if you don't have children or you aren't in active parenting years, when something happens to an extended family member and you become the person who's the power of healthcare, power of attorney, stepping in to help with caregiving, all of a sudden all of your leisure time goes away. You'll be taking some extra PTO or sick time from work in order to support that person. And you'll be working all the hours and you don't have that extra free time, and is very stressful. Caretaking is very stressful on caretakers. We don't really talk about it a lot. There is some research that is done with it, but when you're not in a caregiving season, you don't really realize how much people who are in a caregiving season are kind of landlocked next to that person they're caring for, and they lose a lot of their leisure time. Now, with all those depressing facts laid out, the way in which I have been able to always be learning and growing is listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks. Like, you could do that while you're driving to and from. I'll even doing it when I'm caretaking. Like, if I'm outside with my grandson and he's playing on the running around, like, I'll be listening to a podcast, weeding, listening to a podcast. So I'm getting that little bit of growth and professional development, but I can't physically go to a conference. I can't take time to sit down and just read a whole book. So if it's not on Audible, I'm probably not listening to it right now.
I love those ideas. I have a daughter who's in her mid 30s and with 5 children, including a 4-month-old, and she is. I mean, they have her oldest is 16 now. So in high school, junior high, elementary school, babies, and life is just crazy because so many things that they have going on. Their tennis and learning instruments and church and all these activities. Yet she does a really good job of finding time to listen. Just like my wife, she's constantly listening to books, and there's so many things you can do while you're multitasking. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you have something in your ear just listening. So much learning passively is really, really powerful. You've coached thousands of people on organization. What's one thing that really the most common thing that leaders get right at work and wrong at home?
Planning. So when I was doing my dissertation and I was studying housework, we often study housework based on the division of male-female work, which doesn't always work in all households. But I found a interesting study in the workplace where they evaluated planning, 2 kinds of planning: contingency planning and time management planning. Time management planning is the planning you're used to doing on a calendar when you'll look at your next week before you leave on Friday. And you'll make sure, like, okay, I've got everything I need for all the meetings next week, following up on emails, sending out emails to make sure all these meetings are going to hold, pulling anything I want to read over the weekend in order to be up to date for whatever I've got on tap next week, and making sure my calendar's up to date. That's time management planning. And then there's contingency planning. Contingency planning says, okay, if, there's a big fire that needs to be put out, someone comes in your office at 8 a.m. on Monday and says, do you have a minute? Can I talk to you? We all know what that means. They're quitting. So, it's like 8 a.m. on a Monday. So this is contingency planning. If that happens Monday at 8 a.m., what still needs to happen Monday? How can Monday's tasks move to Tuesday? Do we have any wiggle room in the calendar? At the end of the week, what must have gotten done in order to call this week a success? So in that study, they found that if you had time management planning or contingency planning, both of those people were more successful than people who did not have planning. But if you had both, you were more successful than everyone, because you were able to get done what you needed to get done, and it didn't necessarily happen when you thought it was going to happen. However, even if you had both kinds of planning in place, you would only get 80% done of what you needed to get done. So, said another way, one day every single week is a wash. Every single week, you're going to have one day where it's just like, well, the wheels came off. I guess we will come back in tomorrow and we will make that work. So saying that, now taking it into the home. In the home, we'll make checklists. And when you have a checklist and you go to work from a checklist and you only have 15 minutes, you're going to go down there. You're going to go, what one 15-minute task can I do? Or what 3 5-minute tasks can I do in this 15 minutes? So if you have a task on there that's 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 hours, you're not even going to do part of that task because you're used to like, how many things can I check off? So it's not a very efficient way of doing work. Secondly, if you're making the plan, we often will put down appointments on our calendar, but we won't put down travel time because we think that we can just teleport from one thing to the other and there won't be the driving time. And to your point, your daughter who has 5 kids, you have driving time. You better also put the 30 minutes in there to get kids in the car because of course the baby's going to have a blowout. The 4-year-old is going to forget to go to the bathroom. And my grandson is 4 and my other grandson is 4 months. So I know you got to make sure the diaper bag is done. Do we have the bottles? Do we have everything we need? So it takes about an hour to get somewhere.
Which
an
is
hour
why the
to get
partner
home. You
comes
gotta
home and
factor all
says,
that.
what have you even been doing all day? That.
Yeah, you've been doing all that. So that's that contingency planning. And then I was thinking in the last point that I was making, because it was kind of depressing, all the work that we need to do, or if you're in a caregiving role, how do you self-actualize during that time? What you really need is not to go, well, maybe you do need to go to a Pilates class, but you really need to have protected planning time for the week and for the month. So for me, I have 90 minutes a week where I'm actually looking at the schedule, making sure I have everything in the house that I need, the right groceries, everybody's covered. Like I'm going to watch my grandkids so my daughter can go to the teacher meeting that she had to have today. Like everybody's got coverage wherever they need to be. And then I also take another 2 to 3 hours once a month where I just do CEO work once a month, where I'm like, okay, let's review the budget. Let's look at myself personally. What do I need? And you really need to be able to do that without having other caregiving responsibilities. It's hard to find, but when you can find that time, you just feel so much more organized, put together, purposeful, and like you could do another 7 days.
So I would say my wife is like your spirit sister because she is the queen of planning. Like she loves to
Mhm.
have everything planned. And this is actually something that I've thought about a bit lately because she is honestly the glue that holds the whole thing together. Like
Mhm.
she is the glue, and this is kind of I don't know, I don't even know. It sounds kind of morbid to even bring this up, but
Mm,
in business, another kind of planning is succession planning. Because
right.
what happens if my wife becomes stricken with disease or worse? You know, how does the family stay together? Because I have seen it in other families where the person that's the glue, something happens to them, and the family basically disintegrates. And I'm curious to hear from your perspective how you address that with people, because um, in business we try to eliminate a single point of failure, right? we
Right.
we yeah. I have this at work. There's a person on the team, and if this person gets hit by a bus, we are in like big doo doo. Like we are going to have a major problem if this one person. And so we're trying to figure out how do we make sure to skill up other people around that person. So if something happens to this person, we're not at risk. And I kind of feel like that can happen in homes as well. I mean, heaven forbid. I really hope my wife outlives me, because she honestly she's amazing and she is the glue that just kind of brings it all together. And what do you do to help families to kind of prepare for
Yeah.
these eventualities? Because we're not going to be around forever.
Yes.
Well, statistics will show your wife probably will outlive you. My husband's like, Lisa, he's older than me. So he's like, Lisa, you're going to outlive us. Us, like the children and my husband walk around and say, well, mom will outlive us. And that's our plan. Their plan is that I will outlive everyone in the family. But this is a real issue. Like, when you need to step in for your parents as power of attorney and power of healthcare, which I had to do for my dad. He had a health scare, and that's when I found out I was the power of attorney because my parents were divorced. And I had to step in and look at his bills and everything. And I was like 20 or 31 years old. And I was like, okay, I'll just pay the bills. As soon as he came back, I was like, here are your bills. Well, another year later, he was hospitalized, and now we knew that he probably was going to pass away. It was 9 months later that he did. And when I stepped in as power of healthcare and power of attorney that time, we knew I was going to maintain that. And I now see that more often than not, you're going to have this shot across the bow where all of a sudden you find out, hey, you are the executor of your parents' estate and you didn't know it. Or your aunt who was never married, she listed you as the executor of their estate, and they're having a little procedure, or they've fallen and they're going to be in rehab for a week. So you kind of step in. And when you step in, you're like, whoa, I don't know anything about this person's finances, their household, their passwords, any of this. And we don't want to ask because, I mean, that's invading their privacy. But also, they listed you as the power of healthcare and executor of their state. So you better tell them some information. So having settled an estate, and knowing that my husband and I are listed on 7 other estates as the executor, this is not the first one I'm going to do. There is just some basic homework we need to do as humans so that if we can't run the ship, other people can step in on our behalf for a period of time or when we ultimately pass away, because we are all mortal. Now, this is going to happen thousands of years from now. No one is passing away anytime soon. But when you are in that emergency situation, there's already a lot of stress and information can get lost. And if all of the information in your family is in your head, how are people going to know what that information is? Like when my father passed away, the file cabinet had car catalogs and golf scores in it. So that didn't do me very good. And I never got into his computer. So I went to each bank and each lawyer, and that's how I got all the information, which was very expensive. So Organize 365 has created binders. One's for your house, one's for your healthcare, and one is for your finances. And they have Mad Lib worksheets in there for those of us that are Gen X or baby boomers. And you just fill things in, and then you're able to take those to the power of the estate attorney or your accountant, and you have usually about 80% of what you need. It's a great place to start. And most of my clients fill those out proactively, update them annually, so that if anything happens, there's at least a starting point for where is all that information that lives in your head.
Lisa, for those partners, who don't share their enthusiasm for this level of structure in their life, what's your advice for creating alignment without creating friction? Somebody they just want to resist planning altogether. How do you handle that?
Yeah, my husband doesn't plan. But I've got the binders done and I do the planning, so I just do it. I just do it.
Yeah.
They don't have to do it.
So as long as somebody, but what if neither of them want to do it? Then obviously you have a failed business.
Yeah, don't be the executor on that estate. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Well, Christian, we're running out of time here, man. The clock is running out.
Yeah, we got to get to the lightning round, Spencer.
Would you have anything else before we? I would love to know what that little.
I do have one.
Make sure she has time to tell us what the folder and book are about behind her. That little folder.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You got a book back there. You got stuff back there. We wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us what you got behind you there.
Oh, thanks so much. Okay, so this is the Sunday Basket. This is that weekly planning system that I teach household managers how to plan and keep track of their projects and all of their ideas that come in. My latest book is coming out in June called Escaping Quicksand. This is the mental mindset shifts I went through in my 40s that allowed my productivity and positivity to stick because I changed some of my thoughts in my 40s. And then the binders are part of the paper solution. So you could buy them individually, or they're a set and they have a workbook in there and some slash pockets that you could put all the information in. And so that's called the paper solution.
And that's where the Mad Libs are?
Yes, the Mad Libs.
So I remember, when I was young as a manager, we had those accordion files with the dates of the week or the months, and you could put things, you could put your papers in that day to follow up. Those are things you needed to do. I used a lot of those files. That's what that little file cabinet back there reminded me of. All right, got days of the week I need to check. So we have what's called the lightning round. And this is where you just get basically a few seconds. We don't want you thinking about it. We want you one word answers, one sentence answer, very, very quick. And you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Speaking of fill in the blank, household management is best described in one word as
Organization.
task list or shared calendar. Which one actually works?
Shared calendar.
The most underrated skill in running a household is?
Planning.
Finish the sentence. Great teamwork happens when?
You communicate.
Biggest myth about organized people, true or false? They're just naturally that way.
That is the biggest myth. True.
Morning routine or evening reset, which matters more?
Evening reset.
Delegate or do it yourself? What's your honest default, Lisa?
Delegate.
Oh, wow. What's one app or
CEO,
tool?
come on.
Right? All right, you employee kids. That's why Christian was asking that. We know now. What's one app or tool every household team should be using?
Google Calendar.
If your home had a performance review, what would be on the improvement plan?
We need a new roof. I keep my house pretty well maintained, so I don't let the fires smolder. Nothing's labeled. There are no color-coded bins. It doesn't look like Better Homes and Gardens, but there's nothing that needs to be done. Everything is just maintained.
No dusting?
Well, I still have somebody doing that for me. COVID's over.
Finish the sentence. The one thing leaders never think to apply at home is?
Self-actualization for themselves in the household setting.
All right. That's all I have.
All right. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, Lisa. We appreciate you spending an hour with us here and with our viewers and listeners. If people want to learn more about the work that you're doing and how your organization could potentially help them, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, so the podcast is called Organize 365. It's been going on for almost 12 years, and the website is organize365.com.
We'll put those in the show notes, Lisa. Your YouTube, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, we'll put all those in the show notes. So if anyone's listening wants to get a hold of you, they can easily do that.
Yeah, we encourage you to do so. And Spencer, you've been helping organizations build high-performing teams for a long time, decades. I mean, I've known you for more than 20 years, and you've been doing it longer than that, not to age you or anything. But if people want to connect with you, how do they do that?
Luckily, my eyebrows have not yet turned gray. I don't know what that. They reach me on LinkedIn, Christian, and same. I mean, what's the best way to find you, my friend?
LinkedIn, that's easy. So, yeah, just look up Christian Napier. Happy to connect with folks there. All right, Lisa, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. I learned a lot today, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And listeners and viewers, we're so grateful for you as well. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you again soon.